Welcome to Spot Growth, the podcast dedicated to pediatric speech, physical, and occupational therapists. We explore strategies, insight, and success stories to help you elevate your practice. Join us as we spot growth together.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Spot Growth Podcast. This is your host, Aaron Marshall with Extra Mile Billing, and we've been talking about how to move from the technician to the manager and the entrepreneur of your business. So we're going, following along the story of a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And he talks to us about a few different roles. So if you haven't heard the first podcast in this 2-episode series, I would encourage you to go back and take a listen to that. And today we're going to be talking about and really kind of breaking down what habits begin to move you out of that clinician mode and into that CEO mode. So that's what I want to see. I want to see providers and owners begin to build businesses that actually require them as a CEO, not as a technician. So that's what we're working on today and over the past couple of weeks. So the first thing that I want you to think about here is going to be called CEO time blocking. Okay. So you're the CEO. You need a minimum of 2 hours per week blocked completely off of your schedule. I'm talking about no clients, obviously, no admin calls. So you are not stopping and answering questions. You're not leaving your, phone on and any messaging system that you have on, no distractions, no admin, nothing. Okay. So you're blocking off at least 2 hours of the week. And the focus for those 2 hours of the week is going to be on what metrics am I measuring or do I need to measure for success in my business? What goals do I have? 90-day goals, 9-month goals, 2-year goals, 5-year goals. What are the goals that I have? What systems do I need to be building? And how do I need to be developing my teams? Okay. Don't do everything in one 2-hour block. This 2-hour time block that you have every single week should be focused on these categories: metrics, goals, system building, and team development. Okay. The second thing I want you to consider, and it depends on your size, obviously, some will and some won't need this, but you need a weekly team rhythm. Okay. I say team rhythm because you should not be alone. You should be able to work within that team. Okay. So it is a team huddle. Team huddles are there to build culture. Okay. So that's an important part of it. A leadership meeting, and then probably those are weekly, but then a monthly one-on-one with supervisors. Because if you're not touching base with each one of those, the whole team, the leadership team, your speech supervisor, OT supervisor, PT supervisor, if you're not touching base with each one of those, you begin to lose track just a little bit and pull back just a little bit with what's going on, with those teams and, some of their frustrations, some of their victories, some of the things that you can share around, some of the things that you're thinking about doing that they need to be in the loop on. It requires some leadership and some, connectedness throughout the week and throughout the month. What I want you to do is I want you to document as you go. And that's how you build systems. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn those answers to the questions that you get asked over and over and over again. You're going to turn those repeated answers into checklists, templates, scripts, and policies. Okay. So you are going to then take what is the script that I need to be using for asking about eligibility and benefits for a patient, and you're going to turn that into something that anybody else can do. Okay. So that's the kind of systems I'm talking about. Turn those things into systems. If you've got 2 hours a week to do this, again, this is not an overnight thing. This takes time and you can do it. And people have come before you and done it before you. And there's resources out there you can start tapping your friends for. You can ask around. People love to share and help, especially when it's successful things that have worked for them. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to time block that 2 hours a week, a minimum of 2 hours a week, to work on those things and begin to build those metrics, those goals, those systems, and develop those teams. So that's what I want you to start doing. Okay. The second thing here is I really want you to start building systems that let the business run without you. Okay. And there's a number of systems that allow the business to run mostly without you. And that's really what we're getting to here. We want a business where most of the departments run themselves. Okay. And then you can focus, like we talked about last week, on the CEO pieces, the pieces that require an owner. And at that point, you're not thinking, how can I double my business? You're thinking about, how can I multiply my business by 10 times? Okay. And that's the mindset that you really want to be in as a CEO is not, how can I get one more client, but it's, how can I get 3 more offices? Okay. That's really where I want you to be thinking about this. So, those must-have systems for spot practices that can and should be run without you are intake and scheduling. Okay. You can create a clear flow for referrals. You know where referrals are coming from. You know where all the places that you're getting referrals from. Create a clear flow for where those referrals flow into, who manages the process, what's that standard script for how to check eligibility and benefits, and then what are the rules around scheduling. You can set all that up for someone else to be able to execute. Second thing is a billing system. Okay, if you're not outsourcing your billing, which this is Aaron Marshall with Extra Mile Billing. Give us a call. But if you're not outsourcing your billing, there is a clear workflow here. Okay, you know how many times a week you want to send claims out. You know what you're reviewing for those claims. You know how much you're following up on those claims, those payments. You know what your expectations are for accounts receivable. So create those clear metrics, put those checks in place. Someone else can execute that process. The next one is documentation. Okay. You have certain expectations for documentation. So setting up that template for a speech evaluation and plan of care, you can do that. There's so many systems out there for doing that. The intake paperwork documentation, the SOAP note documentation, all these different things. You have these standards already. It's about putting them on paper and building a culture around finishing and executing the documentation system that you've put in place. A little bit more advanced one here would be maybe the hiring and the onboarding, but at some point you're going to be able to step out of that too. You may still make the hiring decision, but there are steps to an interview that you can hand off. You can hand off those interview steps. You can hand off the training of, let's say, the EHR, the execution of the paperwork, a 30, 60, 90-day plan for how that therapist comes on. You can be upfront with all that, and you can begin to hand that stuff off. The next and the last one here would be the communication system. Okay. So how are you communicating with your parents? How are you communicating with your team? And what are the different escalation protocols that need to be in place? So if a parent calls in and they ask about, I'd like some medical records, great, that's fine. Someone should be able to handle that. But if a parent calls in and says, I'm not having a good experience with this therapist, maybe that's an escalation up to the owner. And that's something that you take on. But establishing those escalation protocols is so important to reduce the amount of things that hit your radar. Okay. Because the people below you that you're hiring should be able to answer the things that shouldn't hit your radar. And that should be a lot. Because especially if you're paying someone to sit at a front desk for 40 hours a week, there's a lot that they should be empowered to do. And as long as it doesn't reach that level of escalation, then you should empower them to handle that stuff. So communications, I feel like that is what drives owners crazy more than anything else, is just, making sure that everybody is taken care of, whether it's clients, therapists, things like that. But there should be clear lines that it doesn't reach that owner CEO level unless it's been through these pieces of escalation. Okay. And the goal here is not, the perfect system that, that is, bought and paid for and everything else. It is repeatable systems. Okay. So things will always be evolving. And I think, as owners, that. So it's not about getting it perfect and getting it right the first time. It's about making something that is repeatable that anybody can step into and do, so that you're not dependent on a person, you're dependent on a process. And that's where the hiring and your front desk person says, hey, I'm moving on, and then now you got to run out and find somebody new because they've got all the knowledge. And no, we don't want to depend on that. We want to depend on a process and a system so that anybody can plug and play, step in and step out and be a part of that. So some of the questions I want you as the CEO. So this is the CEO mindset, and this is what it sounds like. These are the questions that I want you to be asking. How do I design this so that it works well without me? Okay. So every single thing you're doing, and it takes time. Okay. Because things do require you at first, especially. So how do I design this though, so that it works well without me? The other questions, who can own this task instead of me? Okay. That's a question that I ask myself constantly all the time. Who can own this instead of me? Who can own this instead of me? The next one is, what system prevents this issue long term? Okay. We keep having this issue pop up. We keep seeing, problems with authorizations coming from Sunshine. There's partial denials. Well, what system can we use to prevent those partial denials long term? Maybe it's a better and more elaborate evaluation that you can work on that makes it, more clear and more medically necessary for what you're requesting. Another question is, does this decision support our future vision? Okay. So let's say there's an office space that opens up in your building and you're like, oh, good, I'll just expand in that office space. That'll be great. But it's only one office, and you really, you want to open a whole office for OTPT and speech. Well, does the decision to pick up one more small space in your building, because it's in your building, support your future vision, or does it not? Okay. The last question here is, what data am I missing? What am I missing that will allow me to make good decisions, right? So let's say you're billing out to 10 different insurance companies and you're getting money back, but you don't necessarily know which insurance companies are paying quickly and accurately versus which ones you're spending a whole lot of time off. What data am I missing to be able to do that? Well, it's about aging. It's about being able to use the financial data that's coming in. How do you get access to that? Well, if you're having trouble with that, definitely reach out to me. There's a lot of things we can do there, but you got to ask that question: what data am I missing to be able to make the right smart decisions? Because I want you to have a mindset shift here. I want you to shift from a doer to a designer, and from a responder or a reactor to a leader. Okay. Those are the two shifts. So you don't want to be doing, you want to be designing things to be done. And you don't want to be responding to, hair on fire events all day long. You want to be leading others to be able to handle those questions at their level so that, things don't get to you unless it needs to. Okay. So here's my challenge. And honestly, this is a weekly challenge for all the owners out there. 3 things. Number 1, I want you to ask yourself, what is one task that I can delegate or document this week? Okay. So that's an important thing. And you don't have to do it. Ask yourself the question, what is one task that I can delegate or document this week? Okay. That's number one. Number two, ask yourself, what process breaks when I'm not here? And that'll answer the question, well, that's the next system that I have to build. Because you don't want things to break when you're not there. You don't want to step away for, a 10-day vacation with your family and come back to an absolutely broken and demoralizing situation. The third thing I want you to do is ask yourself, if I left here for 2 weeks, would this collapse? Because that is going to reveal to you where you are still operating as a technician and not as a manager or an entrepreneur. I hope this conversation was helpful for you. This is stuff that I struggle with week in and week out, guys. This is not something that is solved, okay? This is an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing piece that we as owners should be able to be honest with ourselves and truly begin to figure out week after week, month after month, year after year, because at the end of this year, I hope that you've asked some of these questions and that you've taken steps so that your next year is not just a repeat of your last year. It's a better, more focused, and hopefully more joyful situation than you were walking out of. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. I hope this was helpful and interesting, and we'll talk to you next time. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us this week on the Spot Growth Podcast. If you enjoyed the discussion, please leave us a review, and if you have any ideas for topics that you'd like to learn more about, please send those to the podcast link at extramilebilling.com.